Real Estate A1 TV Executive Producer, Director, Author, Chief Editor Dr. Kashif Sohail, and our entire team of hundreds of presenters are thankful to the viewers. Today's topic is Real Estate Glossary of Terms and Jargons. Buying a home can be exciting. It can also be somewhat daunting, even if you've done it before. You will deal with mortgage options, credit reports, loan applications, contracts, points, appraisals, change orders, inspections, warranties, walkthrough, settlement sheets, escrow accounts, recording fees, insurance, taxes, the list goes on. No doubt, you will hear and see words and terms you've never heard before. Just what do they all mean? The Federal Trade Commission, the agency that promotes competition and protects consumers, has prepared this glossary to help you better understand the terms commonly used in the real estate and mortgage marketplace. Real estate is a jargon-heavy industry and can be difficult to navigate if you're a new agent or hasn't brushed up on your terminology in a while. Whether you're buying or selling a home, real estate expert Kashif Sohail created this resource to help you learn the vocabulary. Kashif has compiled an ever-growing list of real estate terms you should know to help you better understand the process and plan your move. Kashif Sohail has pulled together a comprehensive dictionary of real estate terms and definitions. From the obscure to the obvious, your clients will find all the information they need below. And you might even find it helpful as you brush up on a term or two. Is there a difference between a real estate agent and a real estate broker? Why does real estate vocabulary use so many confusing acronyms? If the world of real estate terms has you scratching your head, don't worry. Kashif Sohail created this helpful guide of the top terms to know. Whether you're a first-time home buyer or an agent looking to brush up on your knowledge, you'll find what you need to know here. The following are the real estate terms we'll explain.
Real Estate A1 TV Executive Producer, Director, Author, Chief Editor Dr. Kashif Sohail, and our entire team of hundreds of presenters are thankful to the viewers. Addendum. If one or both parties want to change a legal agreement, such as a lease, they can add an extra section detailing the new information without altering the whole document. This additional section is the addendum and doesn't affect the rest of the agreement. As is. Sellers can offer goods as is, meaning the buyer is responsible for accepting them in their current state. While the buyer can examine the goods, such as a property, before buying, any defects discovered after purchase are not the responsibility of the seller. A property marketed in as-is condition usually indicates the seller is unwilling to perform most, if not all, repairs. It could also mean it is priced as-is, which is typically lower than market pricing in the area. Finally, as-is is in the condition at the time the offer was written, and should something happen to the property from the time the offer was written to the closing time which alters that condition, then that property is no longer as-is, as it was, and should be brought back to its original as-is condition at the time of offer at the cost of the seller. Or, in the alternative, the seller should release the buyer from their obligation to purchase and refund the monies spent by the buyer, such as earnest money. Adjustable rate mortgage ARM. With an adjustable rate mortgage, the interest on the loan changes from month to month depending on the market. It may start low and rise, or the opposite. This is the opposite of a fixed rate mortgage, where the interest rate stays the same for the duration of the loan. Amortization. Amortization is the process of paying off a loan over a set period with equal installments. It tracks the amount of money dedicated to the principal and interest for each payment. A loan's amortization rate is the length of time it will take to pay off the loan, which is typically 30 years for a mortgage. Annual percentage rate, APR. APR is the total amount of interest owed on a loan each year. It's a helpful estimate to see before committing to a loan repayment plan. Appreciation. Appreciation is how much the value of a piece of property increases over time. For example, a townhouse purchased in a subdivision 30 years ago may have greatly appreciated if the subdivision has become a popular destination and the homes around it increased in value. Assumable mortgage. An assumable mortgage is when a buyer assumes or takes over the mortgage from the seller. Instead of selling off the property to pay off their mortgage and taking out a new loan, the buyer takes over the terms of the original loan. Active under contract. When a property is listed as active under contract, it usually means the seller has accepted an offer, but the buyer has yet to fulfill all the contingencies in the agreement. The seller remains open to other offers if the buyer isn't able to meet their terms and the deal falls through.
Real Estate A1 TV executive producer, director, author, chief editor Kashif Sohail and our entire team of hundreds of presenters want to educate you about real estate. Appraisal. A third party, an appraiser, conducts an appraisal of a property to ensure that the property is accurately valued. Most lenders will require an appraisal before granting a loan to a homebuyer to ensure the loan is accurate. Assessed value. Tax assessors determine the amount of property taxes a homeowner should pay. By comparing inspection notes and similar home prices, the assessor can determine the value of the home and the corresponding property tax under its particular local government. Adjustable rate mortgage, ARM. With ARM loans, interest rates can change after an initial fixed rate period, as they adjust based on the interest rate index the ARM is tied to. This loan type is less predictable than a traditional fixed rate mortgage, but it can potentially yield lower interest rates during certain periods. Appraisal. An appraisal is required to gather the estimated value of a piece of real estate. During the home sale, the mortgage lender sends an appraiser to get a professional opinion of the value of the property. This helps the lender decide if the property is worth the amount of the loan the potential buyer seeks. Appraisal contingency. An appraisal contingency is a clause that allows a buyer to dissolve a purchase agreement if a home's appraised value is less than the sale price. An appraiser hired by the buyer's lender evaluates the value of the home to ensure that an appropriate home value secures the loan. Lenders want to ensure they are not overpaying for a property. Adjustable rate mortgage, ARM, a mortgage loan with an interest rate that can change throughout the loan's lifetime. Agent, a real estate professional legally licensed to buy and sell property on behalf of their clients. An agent cannot operate independently, they must work under a licensed broker. Amortization, the process of gradually reducing mortgage loan debt over time by establishing scheduled monthly payments. The interest payment of an amortized loan will decrease as time goes on, while the principal payment will increase. Assessed value, the value assigned to a real estate property used to determine its property tax rate. Acceleration clause. Also known as an acceleration covenant, this is a contract provision that requires the borrower to repay all their outstanding loan to a lender if certain requirements outlined by the lender aren't met. Active contingent. When a seller accepts an offer from a buyer, that offer is contingent upon the buyer's ability to meet certain conditions before finalizing the sale. Contingencies could include the buyer selling their home, receiving mortgage approval, or reaching an agreement with the seller on the home inspection. Active under contract. A house is listed as active under contract when the seller has accepted an offer with contingencies, but still wants the house listed as active. In this situation, the seller is also likely to accept backup offers if their current offer fails to meet its contingencies. Addendum. If a buyer or seller wants to change an existing contract, they might add an addendum outlining the specific part of the contract they'd like to adjust and the parameters of that change. The rest of the contract stays the same, regardless of the addendum.
Real Estate A1 TV executive producer, director, author, chief editor Kashif Sohail and our entire team of hundreds of presenters want to educate you about real estate. Adjustment date. This is the date your mortgage begins to accrue interest, though you might not have made a mortgage payment yet. The adjustment date usually falls on the first day of the month after mortgage funds are advanced or dispersed to the borrower. Assignment. An assignment is when the seller of a property signs over rights and obligations to the buyer before the official closing. Abstract of title. A condensed version of the history of title to a piece of land that lists any transfers in ownership, as well as any liabilities attached, such as mortgages. Abutting. The joining, reaching, or touching of adjoining land. Abutting pieces of land have a common boundary. Acceleration clause. A provision in a written mortgage, note, bond or conditional sales contract that, in the event of default, the whole amount of principal and interest may be declared due and payable simultaneously. Acceptance. An offeree's consent to enter into a contract and be bound by the terms of the offer. Accretion. An addition to land through natural causes. Acknowledgement. A declaration made by a person to a notary public or other public official authorized to take acknowledgments that he executed the instrument and that it was his free and voluntary act. Acre. A measure of land equal to 43,560 square feet. Ad valorem. Designates an assessment of taxes against property. Literally, according to value. Additional principal payment. A borrower's payment of more than the scheduled principal amount is due to reduce the remaining balance on the loan. Adjusted basis. The original cost of a property plus the value of any capital expenditures for improvements to the property minus any depreciation taken. Adjustment date. The date on which the interest rate changes for an adjustable rate mortgage. Adjustment period. The period that elapses between the adjustment dates for an adjustable rate mortgage. Adjustments. Money that the buyer and seller credit each other at the time of closing. Often includes taxes and down payment. Administrator or administratrix. A man or woman appointed by a court to settle the estate of a deceased person when there is no will. Contrast with executor or executrix. Adverse possession. The right of an occupant of land to acquire title against the real owner, where possession has been actual, continuous, hostile, visible, and distinct for the statutory period. Affidavit. Written statements signed and sworn to before some person authorized to take an oath. Agency. The legal relationship between a principal and an agent. In real estate transactions, usually the seller is the principal and the broker is the agent. However, a buyer represented by a broker is a growing trend. In an agency relationship, the principal delegates to the agent the right to act on his or her behalf in business transactions and exercise some discretion while acting. The agent has a fiduciary relationship with the principal and owes to that principal the duties of accounting, care, loyalty, and obedience.
Real Estate A1 TV executive producer, director, author, chief editor Kashif Sohail, and our entire team of hundreds of presenters want to educate you about real estate. Agent. A person authorized to act for and under the direction of another person when dealing with third parties. The person who appoints an agent is called the principal. An agent can enter into binding agreements on the principal's behalf and may even create liability for the principal if the agent causes harm while carrying out his or her duties. See also attorney in fact. Alienation clause. A clause in a mortgage that gives the lender the right to call the entire loan balance due if the property is sold, due on sale clause. Amenities. Non-monetary benefits and satisfactions derived from property ownership, such as a pleasant view, pride in home ownership, etc. Amendment. A modification to an existing contract, mutually agreed to by all parties. Examples could include a change in the purchase price due to a low appraisal or a change in the closing date. Amortization. The operation of paying off indebtedness, such as a mortgage, by installments. The conventional amortization periods are 15 or 30 years. Amortized mortgage. A mortgage requiring periodic payments that include both interest and principal. Also see self-amortized loan. Annual membership. The amount charged annually for having a line of credit available. Often charged regardless of whether you use the line. Antitrust laws. Federal and state laws prohibiting, among other things, monopolies, monopolistic practices, restraint of trade, and price fixing. Application. An initial statement of personal and financial information which is required to approve your loan. Application fee. Fees paid upon application. Charges for property appraisal and a credit report are usually included in the application fee. Appraisal. A determination of the value of something, such as a house, jewelry, or stock. Assessor. A local government official who determines the value of the property for taxation purposes. Assignee. A person to whom a property right is transferred. For example, an assignee may take over a lease from a tenant who wants to permanently move out before the lease expires. Assignment. A transfer of property rights from one person to another, called the assignee. Assumable mortgage. An existing mortgage that can be taken over by the buyer on the same terms given to the original borrower. Assumption of mortgage. The transfer of title to property to a grantee, where he assumes liability for payment of an existing note secured by a mortgage against the property. Should the mortgage be foreclosed and the property sold for a lesser amount than that due, the grantee purchaser who assumed and agreed to pay the debt secured by the mortgage is personally liable for the deficiency. Attachment. Method by which a debtor's property is placed in the custody of the law and held as security pending outcome of a creditor's suit. Attorney's opinion of title. An instrument written and signed by the attorney who examines the abstracts of title, stating his opinion as to whether a seller may convey good title. Attractive nuisance. Something on a piece of property that attracts children but also endangers their safety. For example, unfenced swimming pools, open pits, farm equipment, and abandoned refrigerators have all qualified as attractive nuisances.
Real Estate A1 TV executive producer, director, author, chief editor Kashif Sohail and our entire team of hundreds of presenters want to educate you about real estate. Auction. A public sale of property to the highest bidder. Asbestos, a toxic material once used in housing insulation and fireproofing. Assessed value, typically the value placed on property for taxation. Assessor, a public official who establishes the value of a property for taxation purposes. Asset, anything of monetary value owned by a person or company. Assets include real property, personal property, stocks, mutual funds, etc. Assignment of mortgage, a document evidencing the transfer of ownership of a mortgage from one person to another. Assumable mortgage, a mortgage loan that can be taken over, assumed, by the buyer when a home is sold. An assumption of a mortgage is a transaction in which the buyer of real property takes over the seller's existing mortgage. The seller remains liable unless the lender releases the seller from the obligation. Assumption, a homebuyer's agreement to take on the primary responsibility for paying an existing mortgage from a home seller. Assumption fee, a fee a lender charges a buyer who will assume the seller's existing mortgage. Automated underwriting, an automated process performed by a technology application that streamlines the processing of loan applications and provides a recommendation to the lender to approve the loan or refer it for manual underwriting. Abatement notice. It is a legal notice served on the owner, occupier, or tenant of a property to inform them of the violation of local laws pertaining to maintenance of the property. The notice also indicates actions needed to address the violation, and notifies them of the consequences if they fail to take corrective measures. Acre. Unit of measurement of land. 1 acre is equal to 4,048.32 square meters and 43,560 square feet. Addendum. An addition or change in a legal contract. Agent. A person authorized by the state to conduct real estate transactions. Alienation clause. A provision that requires the borrower to pay the balance of the loan amount in a single large installment after the property is sold or transferred. Alley. A lane behind a row of buildings or between two rows of buildings. LID. The person who is allotted a property either by a government authority or by a builder. Appraisal. Official valuation of a property carried out by a certified real estate appraiser or valuer. Appreciation. An increase in the value of a property due to changes in market conditions or other causes over time. Assessed valuation. The value that a taxing authority places on real property to calculate the amount of tax on that property. Annual percentage rate, APR. Appreciation. Assessed value. Adjustable rate mortgage. Adjustable rate mortgages, ARM, offer variable interest rates. It usually begins with a lower interest rate than fixed-rate mortgages, but typically changes over time following market rates. If you don't plan to stay in your home long-term, refinancing to an ARM can sometimes benefit you. Amortization. Amortization refers to a payment schedule outlining what goes toward principal and interest balances. Typically, payment goes toward interest first, and then the principal balance. Appraisal. Appraisals are an expert's opinion of a home's market value. Appraisers examine a home's condition, location, and similar properties recently sold.
Real Estate A1 TV executive producer, director, author, chief editor Kashif Sohail and our entire team of hundreds of presenters want to educate you about real estate. Appreciation. Appreciation is a home's increased value over time. Historically, real estate appreciates from 3% to 5% each year nationally. As is. Sometimes a buyer will ask the seller to update the home during the offer process, like adding new carpeting or replacing an old roof. When a seller does not make any changes to a home, the home is being sold as is. Assessed value. Assessed value is a professional estimate of a home's market price for property tax purposes. Similar properties, the home's location and its condition are considered when finding assessed value. Annual percentage rate, APR, the cost of appraisal, a professional analysis used a loan or other financing as an annual rate to estimate the value of the property. Annuity. Appreciation, an increase in the market. From the insurance company. Value of a home due to changing market conditions and/or home improvements. Arbitration. Abutting. Abutting means an area of land or a building has a common boundary with another. Acceleration clause. The acceleration clause is a contract provision that allows a lender to require a borrower to repay all outstanding loans if payments are not being made or there is a breach of contract. Accretion. Accretion is the slow process of growth or acquisition of land, typically when soil is deposited by the natural action of water. Long-term accretion can actually increase the size of a property. Active property. If you or your client sees a home listing with just active as their status, this indicates the property is available for sale. Actual fraud. Actual fraud is an intentional misrepresentation of fact, or in plain terms lying. Ad valorem. The Latin phrase ad valorem means according to value. Adverse possession. Adverse possession is the legal principle in which a person who does not have a legal right to a property acquires legal ownership based on continuous occupation of the land without the permission of its real owner. Agent. An agent speaks for or represents someone. Agreement of sale. A form that states the buyer consents to purchase a property, and the seller agrees to sell that property with the terms and conditions illustrated in from both parties. Air rights. Air rights are the rights to use the space above the earth. Alienation. Alienation is the act of transferring title, ownership, an estate, or interest in real estate from one party to another. Alienation clause. The provision in a mortgage or deed of trust signed with the lender that states the borrower must pay the mortgage in full before the borrower can transfer the property.
Real Estate A1 TV executive producer, director, author, chief editor Kashif Sohail and our entire team of hundreds of presenters want to educate you about real estate. Let's continue. Amendments. Add-ons, or fixes to contracts. Amenities. Amenities are a useful feature or add-on to a house that typically adds value to the property. Amortization. Amortization is when payments divide into equal amounts for the duration of the loan. Antitrust laws. Antitrust laws are a collection of federal and state government laws that regulate the conduct and organization of business corporations, normally to promote fair competition for the benefit of consumers. Appraisal. An appraisal is an estimate of approximate worth of something. Appraisal contingency. Biggest lenders or banks require the buyer to have an appraisal done to the property before the loan is granted. This is to ensure the house is worth somewhat close to the price of the accepted offer. Appraiser. Although brokers and agents usually understand the valuation process, they usually bring in an appraiser to do the job. Appraisers must have detailed knowledge of the methods of valuation, and many states require a specific license or certification to perform those duties. Appreciation. Appreciation is any gain in the value of a property over time from any cause. Appurtenance. Appurtenance is a noun, describing an item attached to something. In real estate, after something is installed onto a property, it can be called an appurtenance, meaning it is passed on to a new owner if the property is sold. Appurtenant. Appurtenant is an adjective, meaning it is attached to something. If something is appurtenant, it belongs to something else either attached to or by law. Appurtenant easement. An appurtenant easement is a type of easement that runs with the land. Arbitration. Arbitration is a way to resolve disputes. Typically, real estate arbitration happens when two homeowners want to resolve an issue and do not want to directly involve the courts. Attorney in fact. Someone authorized to act on behalf of another person, typically in business or for some sort of business transaction. Avulsion. Avulsion is the immediate action of adding or tearing away land by violent acts from natural causes. An example of avulsion is a dam breaking or a hurricane. Abandonment. Voluntary and permanent cessation with no intention to resume or reclaim one's interest. Acknowledgement. A declaration made by a person to a notary public or other public official that an instrument was executed by him or her as a free and voluntary act.
Real Estate A1 TV executive producer, director, author, chief editor Kashif Sohail, and our entire team of hundreds of presenters want to educate you about real estate. Let's conclude. Real property taxes are according to value. Adjustments. Reconciling, like for different sizes of comparable, different ages, location, different quality. Adverse possession. The right of an occupant of land to acquire title against the real owner, where possession has been actual, continuous, hostile, visible, and distinct for the statutory period. Agency disclosure. Informing the parties to a real estate transaction who you, as an agent, represent. Alienation clause. Appointed agency, assigned agency, or directed agency. Americans with Disability Act. Amortization. A method or pattern of paying off the principal of a loan, where the third payment is the same as the 24th. Appreciation. An increase in the worth or value of a property due to economic or related causes which may prove temporary or permanent, opposite of depreciation. Arm's length transaction. A transaction with a knowledgeable buyer, knowledgeable seller. Assessment ratio. Where property is assessed at only a portion of its value. Assignment. A transfer in writing of rights or interest in a bond, mortgage, lease, or other interest. Assumable. A loan that may be transferred to a new buyer or borrower.